the table, proposals that are actively being considered. And as we've said consistently, more than 75 countries have reached out. So there's a lot of work to do.
Caroline's
very
speaking.
much understand that,
So
but we do believe that we can announce some deals very soon.
Russia, did Russia agree to anything with Special Envoy Steve Witkoff?
I don't want to get ahead of those negotiations as well. What I can tell you is that they were a productive conversation was had. As the presidential envoy Steve Witkoff said last night, he believes that Russia wants to end this war, and the president believes that as well. There is incentive for Russia to end this war, and perhaps that could be economic partnerships with the United States, but we need to see a ceasefire first, and the president and the presidential envoy Witkoff made that very clear to the Russians. Gabe.
Thank you, Caroline. And I also want to thank your press office for releasing that information that you cited up there regarding the ICE arrests over the last couple of days. And I have them right here, but what I might ask is why not release the same information for those who were deported to El Salvador?
Well, first of all, the information was released by the Department of Homeland Security. The individuals on the flights to El Salvador are foreign terrorists, and those are counterterrorism operations. They are much different than the arrests and final order of removals that you see on a day-to-day basis that law enforcement agents are conducting around the country.
That information was not, to that detail, was not released by DHS.
I just told you the reason. It was a counterterrorism operation, a deportation of foreign terrorists, not illegal criminals who have been convicted of heinous crimes living in our American communities. Two different things. Foreign terrorist, illegal immigrant criminal, two different things, two different definitions. You should look them up. Christian, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Caroline. Does the president support raising the corporate tax rate to pay for all these other tax cuts he wants to see moved through Congress?
Look, I've seen this idea proposed. I've heard this idea discussed, but I don't believe the president has made a determination on whether he supports it or not.
And then secondly, do you have any information on the status of Eden Alexander? Hamas says they lost contact with the unit guarding him following an Israeli airstrike earlier today.
I don't have updates. I have not seen that report, but I can certainly check in with our National Security Council. I have spoken to the president about Eden Alexander, and he's made it very clear to our national security team that finding him is a priority, but unfortunately, I don't have any updates to share. But it's a very important matter, and certainly we can check in. Sure.
Hi. How concerned is the president that a federal judge could hold a Trump administration official in contempt of court for defying deportation orders?
We are complying with all court orders. So I see what you're trying to do there with that question, but we're very confident that every action taken by this administration is within the confines of the law, and we continue to comply with the court's orders. And you have seen that, and the president made that clear yesterday in the Oval Office with President Bukele. Sure.
Thanks, Caroline. Could you, just going back to El Salvador, could you just explain to us a little bit more about the legal basis on which you may be able to send U.S. citizens to prison there? I know you said President Trump is looking at it, but can you explain to us a little bit more about how that might be possible?
We're looking at it, and when I have more for you to share, I certainly will. Sure.
Still going off the El Salvador questions, yesterday in the Oval Office, administration officials made it very clear that El Salvador is responsible for Mr. Abrego Garcia, yet El Salvador's president said we're not going to do anything with him. So my question is, who is responsible for this man and where he's going to end up?
Well, no. First of all, President Bukele said that he is not going to smuggle a foreign terrorist back into the United States of America, as many in this room in the Democrat Party seemingly want him to do. Abrego Garcia was a foreign terrorist. He is an MS-13 gang member. He was engaged in human trafficking. He illegally came into our country. And so deporting him back to El Salvador was always going to be the end result. There is never going to be a world in which this is an individual who's going to live a peaceful life in Maryland because he is a foreign terrorist and a MS-13 gang member. Not only have we confirmed that.
So there's this overnight trading phenomenon, and it actually led to $823 in automatic profits.
His engagement in human trafficking. I'm not sure what is so difficult about this for everyone in the media to understand. And it's appalling, truly appalling, that there has been so much time covering this alleged human trafficker and this gang member, MS-13 gang member. It's truly striking to me. Karen.
Thanks, Caroline.
The president was posting on Truth Social today about helping American farmers. And last week in his cabinet meeting, he was talking about a plan to work with farmers.
Dude, don't you just love how she freaking
provided that they read and
don't you just love how she
what he said
rips
would be
these
illegal.
these dudes?
Details on what that would look
She just
like.
rips them,
How
man.
many workers he's talking about, how long a plan like that would take to implement, and the timeline for more details on getting this actually to implementation.
I can check in with our immigration and our policy team and get you some more details on that, Karen.
Or is this something he wants to roll out soon? I mean, he was talking back and forth with Secretary Rollins as
Right.
if this is kind of imminent that he wants to do this.
Yeah, look, the president is in constant communication with all of his cabinet secretaries, particularly Secretary Rollins, who has the backs of American farmers and ranchers. It's something that he spoke about with her in the front of all the cameras in the cabinet room, but I'll check in with not only our immigration team, but also with USDA, and we'll get you an answer. Jonathan.
Hi, Caroline.
Hi, it's good to see you in here.
You too. The president has long said that it would be an abuse of power for a president to direct prosecutors to investigate him. Last week, President Trump explicitly directed the Justice Department to scrutinize Chris Krebs to see if it can find any evidence of criminal wrongdoing. How is that not an abuse of power to direct the Justice Department to look into an individual, a named individual?
Look, the president signed that executive order. It's the position of the president in this White House that it's well within his authority to do it. Otherwise, he wouldn't have signed it. And he signed it, and that's his policy. Jeff, how you doing?
Fine, thanks, Caroline. A follow-up on Harvard. The president floated on Truth Social, I believe, the possibility of removing tax-exempt status. How serious is that threat, and are other universities he's considering? And then a follow-up question on foreign policy. Can you give us an update on what the president hopes to come from the next round of talks with Iran?
Sure. First, when it comes to Harvard, as I said, the president has been quite clear they must follow federal law. He also wants to see Harvard apologize, and Harvard should apologize for the egregious anti-Semitism that took place on their college campus against Jewish American students. There were professors who said that he had engaged in discriminatory behavior against Jewish students. Of course, you had the former president of the university saying bullying and harassment depends on the context. You also had an encampment on Harvard Yard that we all saw play out before the cameras. The university failed to impose formal discipline on any students for this anti-Semitic conduct violations, including the occupation of a campus building and a disruption of classes with bullhorns. The president believes Harvard should apologize to its Jewish American students for allowing such egregious behavior. As for the tax-exempt status, I would defer you to the IRS for any updates. I do want to answer your question on Iran. Of course, the maximum pressure campaign on Iran continues, but as you know, the president has made it clear he wants to see dialogue and discussion with Iran while making his directive about Iran never being able to obtain a nuclear weapon quite clear. And the president spoke to the Sultan of Oman today, who helped facilitate these talks. I have a readout for all of you. He held a call with the Sultan of Oman today, and he thanked him for hosting the first direct meeting between the United States and Iran and emphasized the need for Iran to end its nuclear program through negotiations. The two leaders also discussed the United States' ongoing operations against the Houthis and emphasized that the Houthis will pay a severe price until they end their attacks on maritime traffic in the Red Sea. As you know, an additional negotiation between Steve Witkoff and Iran's representative has been scheduled for Saturday. And since these are ongoing negotiations, I have nothing more to add on that. Sure.
Oh, thank you, Caroline. When you said that the president said that Iran will never have nuclear weapon, is the focus on dismantling the entire nuclear program, or it just restricting enriched uranium or the missile program?
The president does not want to see Iran have a nuclear program. He does not want Iran to obtain a nuclear weapon. He's been very clear about this. Shelby. Shelby, you have a seat today.
I know, stole it.
Glad to see it.
Two quick ones on TikTok. First, is the president expecting to extend the TikTok ban that's now June 19th if China doesn't come to the table in time?
Well, June 19th is a long ways away, obviously. I think it's 2 months away. 2 months is a long time in the Trump administration, as you have all seen. We work at Trump speed around here. We get a lot done, so definitely don't want to get ahead. The vice president continues to lead these negotiations and talks. The president's involved, and they're ongoing.
And then the president previously said he'd consider reducing tariffs on China if in order to get a TikTok deal done. Is that option still on the table?
Look, the president has made his position on China quite clear, although I do have an additional statement that he just shared with me in the Oval Office. The ball is in China's court. China needs to make a deal with us. We don't have to make a deal with them. There's no difference between China and any other country except they are much larger. And China wants what we have, what every country wants, what we have, the American consumer. Or to put it another way, they need our money. So the president, again, has made it quite clear that he's open to a deal with China, but China needs to make a deal with the United States of America.
Still too lazy to learn AI? Watch others get ahead while you stay behind. Disappear for 1 month to become the most dangerous.
Suggested that there could be some help for automakers. I'm wondering what that looks like. Is it tariff relief on the 25% tariffs that are in place right now, or the new tariffs that are coming up in May on auto parts? And a second on Canada, if I may. President Trump's tone when it comes to Canada-U.S. relations, Canadians have noticed it's shifted a bit in the past few weeks. Ever since the election campaign started, he stopped talking about Canada becoming the 51st state, at least publicly. I'm wondering if that's on purpose and why.
I would reject the president's position on Canada has shifted. Perhaps he just hasn't been asked about Canada by questions from this group in the Oval Office, but they see him almost every day. But the president still maintains his position on Canada. The United States has been subsidizing Canada's national defense, and he believes that Canadians would benefit greatly from becoming the 51st state of the United States of America. As for autos and auto parts, I don't have anything to read out for you there, but I think the point the president was making is flexibility, and he has flexibility when it comes to negotiations and talks. But ultimately, his goal in his fair trade deals that he is pursuing with many countries around the world is to put the American worker first. And we had automakers and auto workers here at the White House on Liberation Day who believe in this president and his negotiating ability to put them first and to bring those jobs back to the United States of America. And the president's been very clear about that in his conversations with the automakers as well. Deanna, go ahead.
Thanks, Caroline. One on Ukraine and one on China. On Ukraine, this past weekend, Zelensky offered an invitation to President Trump, extending an offer for him to visit Ukraine. Just wondering if there's any update on that. Has Trump seen that offer and what he's thinking about?
I don't know. Actually, I haven't talked to the president about that, or if he saw Zelensky's offer. I'm sure he did. I haven't spoken to him about it. I can ask him what he thinks. I certainly don't have any plans to share on a potential trip to Ukraine, though.
On China, this last week, Chinese officials were posting videos on social media sites depicting a Trump, JD Vance, Elon Musk in AI-generated videos working in factories, putting together Nike shoes and iPhones and products like that. Does the White House, have they seen these videos? Do you guys have a response to that?
I have seen the videos. I'm not sure who made the videos or if we can verify the authenticity, but whoever made it clearly does not see the potential of the American worker, the American workforce. The president believes in the American people, and he knows that we have the best not only consumer base in the world, but also the best workforce in the world. And that's why he's so focused on bringing investments home and shoring up our critical supply chains and bolstering our manufacturing here as well. Brett.
Would the president support a ban on members of Congress trading stocks?
I'm certain that's something the president would be interested in looking at, and I can ask him if he would support such a bill. Sure. Yes.
I have a question about the president's post from this morning on farmers. He asked farmers to be patient and just hold on. But a lot of farmers that I've talked to in the last week or so have said, they're in the middle of spring planting season and that a trade war makes everything sort of up in the air. What would his message to them be? And also, is there anything specifically planned to provide relief like in President Trump's last term?
Yes, well, relief is being considered. The Secretary of Agriculture, I know, has spoken to the president about that. And again, it's being considered. And as for the president's message to the farmers, he put it out himself. He could speak for himself much better than I can speak for him. And so I would just direct you to the statement he had telling the farmers again and reiterating his support for them and that he has their backs, which he certainly does. Kelly, in the back.
Thanks, Caroline. Two questions. The first one, a Georgia man was just arrested over alleged threats to kill Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard. Reportedly, there is now increased security around the FBI deputy director. Can you talk about the level of threats against various administration officials? And then a second one on Biden.
I'm sorry to hear that. I had not seen that report. It's very unfortunately, and obviously, the White House, the president, and the entire administration condemn any threats of violence against any administration officials or public officials on both sides of the aisle here in Washington, D.C. It shouldn't be tolerated, and we commend the local law enforcement agencies for arresting this individual.
Biden, he's former President Biden. He's set to deliver his first major speech since leaving office tonight. He plans to talk about what I'm told will be Social Security under the current administration, closing of offices, longer wait times, harder for seniors and people with disabilities to access earned benefits, is what Democrats have been saying today. I wanted to get the president's response, or if he plans to respond to this, and comments on what Democrats are calling cuts to Social Security.
My first reaction when seeing former President Biden was speaking tonight was, I'm shocked that he is speaking at nighttime. I thought his bedtime was much earlier than his speech tonight. I understand the topic of his speech will be Social Security. Let me make it very clear ahead of former President Biden's remarks. President Trump, is absolutely certain about protecting Social Security benefits for law-abiding, tax-paying American citizens and seniors who have paid into this program. He will always protect that program. He campaigned on it. He protected it in his first term, and he's back again to continue protecting it. On the topic of Social Security, I have some news before I let you all go. Later this afternoon, the president will be signing a presidential memorandum aimed at stopping illegal aliens and other ineligible people.
Prop firms gather capital to fund traders like me and you, and then they share in the profits.
To ensure ineligible aliens are not receiving funds from the Social Security Act programs. It will expand the Social Security Administration's fraud prosecutor program to at least 50 U.S. attorney offices and establishes a Medicare and Medicaid fraud prosecution program in 15 U.S. attorney offices. The memorandum will also require the Social Security Administration Inspector General to investigate earning reports for individuals aged 100 or older with mismatched Social Security records to combat identity theft. And the memorandum will direct the Social Security Administration to consider whether to reinstate the use of civil monetary penalties against individuals who engage in Social Security fraud, an effort that has been paused for several years. These taxpayer-funded benefits should be only for eligible taxpayers. And President Biden should think about what he did in his last term, which is allow tens of millions of illegal people into our country, many of whom were fraudulently receiving these benefits. So you'll hear from the president on that later, and we will see you later in the East Room. Bye, guys.
Thanks, Caroline.
Good afternoon, everybody.
All right. My girl Caroline's done. Caroline. All right, hang on a second. Yeah. Do this really quick. I don't know, man, but one thing I will say about Caroline is she don't take no crap at all. I might stream the Powell, Fed Chair Powell speech a little bit later on. So come on back. Yeah, I'll probably stream that for sure. All right. Talk to you later. Peace.